Mr. President.
Senator from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. President. As my colleague from Texas said, people are looking forward to hearing what the President will say and what he will not say tonight. And as I've been home over the weekend, one of the things I've heard from Tennesseans about is the out-of-control federal spending. Now, we know what the Democrats have done in plussing up the budget for the last couple of years, but one number kind of stuck with me, and it's about $3.6 trillion as taxpayer dollars that has been spent on Democratic wish list items. A lot of this is the Green New Deal. A lot of this is the reckless spending agenda that they are pushing. Now, they forced through in 2021 $1.85 trillion in spending. And then they came back around and they wanted to talk about inflation. And Joe Biden had 1.4% inflation when he took office. And because of this out-of-control spending and spending more and more and more and hundreds of billions of dollars, you saw inflation in June of 22 hit 9.1%. And people are frustrated about this. But you know, Mr. President, one of the things that got Tennesseans was the fact that this president didn't say, well, it's because we've put all this money, federal spending, your dollars, we're putting these back out there. No, he blamed Vladimir Putin. It was Putin's fault. To Tennesseans, this was outrageous. And it was the go blame somebody else game. The Biden administration's neglect of the economy and their complete disregard for the destructive effects of their spending is something that has caught the attention of Tennesseans. And this term for this president wasn't even halfway over, and already his policies are making everyday life too expensive to afford. And to be clear, Tennesseans talk to me about being worried about the basics of life: food security, food for the table, clothes for the kids, gas for the car. They feel like this agenda, this set of priorities that this administration has, is just stealing away a lot of their life, their living, their enjoyment, because there's not extra money left over. It is all going into necessities. Pardon me. They're struggling to manage 6.5% inflation. They're looking at the cost of food that is up 13% from where it was a year ago. Keeping the heat on in this cold winter, 16% more. And it's the same story when you talk about school supplies, when you talk about clothes for the kids. It's the same story here in Washington, where it seems that Joe Biden, this administration, and the Democrats are once again poised and ready to go spend more money. They're wanting to raise the debt ceiling without even a conversation about spending cuts. To Tennesseans, that's outrageous. Now, my Democratic colleagues have spent a lot of time talking about what will happen if Congress fails to raise the debt ceiling, and I don't think anyone here denies that the country has some serious discussions that need to be had. But I would ask my colleagues to remember that raising the debt ceiling is not a green light to keep spending money until we crash into another debt ceiling. Tennesseans understand this. They've spent 2 years cutting costs because common sense tells them that you just can't keep spending with reckless abandon. And they want to know why the Democrats in Washington don't get this. And yes, indeed, everybody spends too much up here. But why are my Democratic colleagues unwilling to talk about making any cuts? Now, there are some things that we could do to start this process. And there are 3 bills that I file every single year. And Mr. President, when you and I were across the dome in the House, I would file these bills every single year because they're common sense. They would make a 1% or a 2% or a 5% across-the-board spending cut. Every federal agency ought to be able to do that. The American people do that. Making that 1 penny out of $1 reduction in spending would save us money. And there again, you do this in the discretionary spending to get things rolling. Start it there, a penny in $1. Then how about 2 pennies in $1? You know, if you cut just a penny out of $1, that would save you $5.2 billion. If you did that just in discretionary, didn't do it in the military, didn't do it in mandatory spending, just discretionary. 2 cents out of $1, then you're going to get more than $10 billion in savings. These are small little steps. But you know what? In the end, if you do that, you cut a nickel out, $26 billion. But do that every year, Mr. President. Do it so that we are not wasting taxpayers' money. This is not government's money. It is not your money. It is not my money. It's not the money of this chamber or of the House. It is the money of the people of this country, and we are charged with spending that carefully, accountably, transparency to the people. Tennesseans cannot take, and they will not accept, another year of this reckless spending. They are demanding change, and this is the bare minimum of what they would accept. Tiny little cuts like that, steps in the right direction, and then holding to it. Don't come back in 2 years and say we've got to waive the caps. They want to see some structural change. Now, unfortunately, the president has said that he has no plans to negotiate his spending levels. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say about this tonight, because to Tennesseans, it's almost, unfortunately, as somebody said this weekend, it's laughable, it is shameful that he does not want to negotiate, that he's not going to talk about spending less, that he only wants to talk about spending more. Senate Democrats cannot keep putting off this debate in order to save the president's failed agenda. Our job is not to serve the White House. It is to serve the American people, and they are saying, do something about the wasteful, out-of-control spending. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.